Hello everybody and welcome back to another Betting Expert MMA video where I'm your host. My name is Adam and today we're going over some of my thoughts as we preview UFC Fight Island #1's main event, which is Calvin Kattar versus Dan Ige. Great featherweight bout. I think it's a very interesting fight, so without further ado, let's get straight into it. So our first segment is called What Are the Odds? And here we preview what the odds are for both of the fighters involved in the main event. We have Calvin Kattar coming in as a very big favorite here. He has odds of 130, whereas Dan Ige is the big underdog with odds of 350. So before we get into the analytic breakdown of this fight, let me introduce you to the two fighters involved in the main event. We have Calvin, the Boston finisher, Kattar. He's 32 years old. He's a boxer with a professional record of 21 wins and 4 losses. Inside the UFC, he has a record of 5-2, only losing to Renato Moicano and Sabit Magomed Shapirov. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Two very good prospects are the only guys he's lost to. Otherwise, he's beaten the likes of Chris Fishgold, Ricardo Lamas, and last time we saw him, he actually beat UFC veteran Jeremy Stephens. And let's talk a little bit about that fight because that was a very good performance from Kattar. Started out in the first round feeling out Stephens a little bit, and then eventually was able to close the distance and get the knockout shot, which ended the night. Very impressive stuff from Kattar, and he is a knockout artist. He has 11 knockouts on his resume, along with 2 submissions and 8 decisions. So that's a little bit about Calvin Kattar. He is a striker and he likes to go for the knockout. Okay, so let's take a closer look at Dan 50K Ige. Ige is 28 years old. He has a professional record of 14 wins and only 2 losses. And in the UFC, he only has 1 loss and 6 wins, so that's pretty impressive. He has 3 knockouts and 5 submissions, along with 6 decisions. So he is a bit well-rounded, and he actually also does possess some good grappling, which is also apparent when you look at his submission victories. If we take a look at his last fight, like we did with Kattar, Ige last fought Edson Barboza, who moved down from lightweight down to featherweight to face Ige. Very, very close fight. It ended with a split decision win for Dan Ige, but many MMA fans think that the fight should actually have gone to Barboza, so very controversial outcome there. I recently watched the fight and I do think it is very close. I think you can make a solid case for the draw because I don't see either fighter really losing that fight. So I do think that could have been a draw. Either way, he got dropped in the first round of the fight, managed to get back, get some takedowns, dirty box Barboza, and the round number 3 was his round. Both fighters had great moments, but I think split decision for Ige is justifiable, but I also see it being a draw. So yeah, that was Ige's last fight. Okay, so now we're moving on and looking at where the value is on this fight from a better standpoint. I personally see this as a dog or pass situation, simply for the reason that Kattar is coming off a very impressive win over a big name, Jeremy Stephens. The casual bettors know who Jeremy Stephens is. Knocking him out like that, which not many people has been able to do, just I think elevates Kattar's brand a lot in the media, on the internet. I think a lot of people know who Kattar is now, but who may not have known him before that knockout win. And I think that's going to attract it has attracted a lot of money from the casual bettors, the casual fan base. So I think that Kattar is just a bit overpriced. At the same time, I do think Ige is a bit underpriced because of his last I think he's actually coming off 2 split decision wins, but in his last fight it was a split decision win, which we just covered over Edson Barboza. And I do think that when you look at a split decision win, which is so controversial, many people scored it the other way. Some people tend to look at that almost as a loss, even though he won. And for that reason, I think that a lot of money is coming in on Kattar. And I think once the over-under market is released, I do expect the odds to, or the general consensus to be that this fight is going to end inside the distance, because people will think Kattar will get that knockout over Ige. It could happen, but honestly I think Ige is just so underpriced, and he has some advantages over Kattar, which I will go into more in depth with now. So here's what I'm liking about Dan Ige in this fight with Calvin Kattar. Number one, Ige is actually a pretty sharp boxer. He has some good dirty boxing, and he has power in his punches. At the same time, he will have the grappling advantage over Kattar. Maybe he can get this fight to the ground a few times, and those power punches, along with the grappling, could be enough to actually fool the judges and give him the nod at the end of the night, which was what happened in his last fight with Edson Barboza, right? Barboza not wanting to go to the ground, but was taken down by Ige, and Ige also landed some pretty good power shots. Second of all, Ige is actually 4-1 in decision fights inside the UFC, which is pretty significant, because at the same time, his opponent Calvin Kattar is actually 1-2, having won 1 decision and lost 2 inside the UFC. I think that's pretty important, because I do see this fight maybe going the distance. Ige is pretty hard to finish. I mean, Barboza had him rocked and couldn't get the job done. So maybe Kattar won't be able to either, who knows. But I still think that's a pretty significant fact to take into consideration. At the same time, Ige has been extremely active in his UFC career. He has 7 UFC fights, and all of them have come inside of 2 years. So this means he's fought about 3 or 4 times in 2018 and 2019. I think that's really big. And he's won 6 of them and only lost 1, so he must be doing something right. Finally, I think he mixes his strikes up really well, and I'm going to go into a bit more detail about that now. Actually, if you look at fights that have gone the distance that Ige has been in, he has landed 65% to the head, 20% to the body, and 15% to the legs, which is pretty good because we know that Kattar is primarily a headhunter, and he doesn't check leg kicks well. So if Ige is smart, kind of what Stevens tried to do also, focus on Kattar's legs, that has cost Kattar fights before. I think Ige can expose this and maybe use it to his advantage. If we look at Kattar's striking, we see that he has about almost 70% of his strikes are thrown at his opponent's head, and the remaining 20% is half of them to the body, half of them to the legs. Kattar is don't get me wrong, he's a phenomenal striker, but he is mostly a headhunter, and I think that is one of the biggest reasons as to why I think Ige has a solid chance in this fight. If he can just keep his guard up, maybe slip some of the straight punches from Kattar and then go to the body and to the legs, I think he could take this via a decision. At least with those odds, I think that's a pretty good bet. So let's go into how I think this betting line might move. I do think once we get closer to the fights and some of the betting experts out there start coming out with their opinions as to who's the value bet in this fight, I do think they will say the same and tell you that Ige is very underpriced here and has a lot of value. I think we'll start to see some money coming in on that side, and the odds will even out a little bit. If we think about live betting for this fight, I do think that Kattar could get a knockdown early in the fight, But as with the Barboza fight, where Ige was also knocked down in the first round, he did manage to come back and actually win the fight. So if Kattar gets that knockdown in the first minutes of their fight, I think a bet on Ige at some plus money could be of very good value actually. So that's my recommendation for you guys. Alright guys, so that was my betting preview of the fight, but let's talk a little bit about who will win this fight, because I am a big fan of mixed martial arts. So I do have a prediction for this fight, which has nothing to do with betting value. So without taking betting value into consideration, I'm gonna make a prediction for this fight. I do think the sharper striker is definitely Kattar. In the striking department is where Kattar can have his moments, can land his shots, and he's very good at his 1-2s and staying on the outside, and his entrances are really sharp as well into his opponent's territory. And I think just Kattar's striking, I mean, Ige is hittable, don't get me wrong. I think Kattar can find his shots, and with his takedown defense of 77%, I do think he could very well stop the takedowns of Ige, keep this fight on the feet and just pick him apart. So I do think he is the rightful favorite. I just don't think that he has any value. I think the value is on Ige's side. I think Ige is being a little bit discredited with odds of 350. And that's why I'm going with Ige for my pick. But for my prediction, I think Kattar wins this fight about 6 out of 10 times, honestly. That's my prediction. Alright guys, that was my breakdown of UFC Fight Island 1's main event between Calvin Kattar and Dan Ige. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Always gamble responsibly. I'll see you guys next time.